Breaking down Arizona Wildcats football, back for a 12th year on television, 13th overall. I am David Kelly, joined by my partner in crime, Glenn Howell, U of A football class of 1985. And Glenn, wow, what a week. I mean, it's the beginning of the new fiscal year on July 1st. And man, we got a bombshell on the last day of the 2021 year when my alma mater, USC, and rival UCLA announced they were leaving the conference to go to the Big Ten. Before I tell you what I feel about this, Glenn, I want to know what your thoughts were when you first heard this.
When I first heard this, I thought it was the end of the Pac-12. UCLA and USC is big part of the Pac-12 conference and the history. And those were the leading guys as far as the football-wise in our conference. They were the ones that were leading the way, and they really haven't been that good in the last almost 5 to 10 years. Because you look at USC, the Pete Carroll era was really good, and then before that, they weren't that good, and they just haven't been very good. And UCLA hasn't been good really since the 1980s or early 90s. So I think it's disappointing about what's happening to our conference. I believe Arizona State and University of Arizona, if we would have been better, a national power every maybe 2 to 3 years, we would have been more attractive to television and people around the country that think in our conference. And you look at the Final Fours and all the times that we weren't in the national championship conversation. So it's been a dwindling kind of downward spiral for the Pac-12. And this one is, I think, it puts the knife in it.
And Glenn, when you say that you wish that Arizona and Arizona State had been better nationally, you're talking about in the sport of football.
In the sport of football. Basketball, we were doing pretty good. We've been doing pretty good, pretty relevant for the last, I say, 15, 20 years. We've been pretty good. We just had that little spot in basketball for a little bit that we weren't as good as we have been in years past, but every couple of years we were. If Arizona and Arizona State would have done that, it would have elevated our conference to a higher level. You know, you look at the Big 12, Oklahoma State, Texas, you know, all these other different, and then sometimes Kansas State was good, you know, and we just never really did that in our conference.
Well, and as an alumni of the University of Southern California, and I hate to use the word hate, but I hate this move. I hate it for the conference. I hate it for my university. I'm disappointed that my university decided to go this route. It makes me extremely angry that they made this decision to basically, I feel like, sell out. They sold out to the East Coast bias, which I have believed that folks here on the west side of the United States need to continually fight and not give in to this thinking that we've got to be East Side relevant. And that's what essentially USC did by making this move. They sold out for the money. They sold out for the East Side relevance. It's disappointing from the standpoint that it's not leading. And I've always thought of my university as a university that leads. This is not leading. This is joining. You're a joiner now. Leaders don't join. And that's what USC has done by making this move and taking UCLA with them. And it just, I mean, I'm angry to the point about it, Glenn, that as an alum, I don't know that I probably will not watch USC football for the foreseeable future. It's kind of like when I gave up the Browns a few years ago when they drafted Baker Mayfield. That's how I feel right now. I feel like I don't want anything to do with USC football for a very, very long time. Obviously, I'll have to pay attention because it's what we do, and they're going to play Arizona, and we cover Arizona. But as far as like if I was a donor for USC right now, they would have gotten a call from me saying that I'm pulling my money, because this is just and I get it. I get the money side of it, but it's just not leading. It's following, and that's the biggest disappointing thing for me.
And Dave, you know what? We got to blame a lot of people in our conference, okay? The Washingtons. Washington was really relevant in the 80s. They got to the national championship, I think, in 2016. They did, and they got creamed, okay? We have to have at least 5 to 6 teams that are relevant in football in the conference, every couple of years. We Washington hasn't been good. USC, Oregon, Oregon's been good, but Oregon gets crushed in the national championship all the time. We weren't winning those. If we would have won those a couple times, that would have been different for our conference. I don't think we would be here. We wouldn't have the East Coast bias because they're saying that we're soft over here. We have to be able to beat those teams, those other teams, especially the SEC, especially in the ACC with Clemson being relevant now. We had to be able to win the couple of those games, and we just didn't do it. Yes, and then we lost to Texas with SC. We lost that game. And, we just haven't done it. And we just have to be more relevant every couple of years. And we just haven't been done it as a Pac-12.
All right, Glenn. So what is next? Can the Pac-12 be saved? Should Arizona remain in the Pac-12? Should they go to the Big 12? I want your thoughts on that. And then I'll tell you kind of a little bit about what I think.
If we're going to save the Pac-12, we're going to have to bring in San Diego State probably, or BYU is going to Big 12. So we got to get San Diego State or maybe even Fresno State. I mean, look at those. I'm sorry. I don't want to disrespect anybody, but man, come on. We got to understand.
Hey, I've been to games at Fresno State. Don't laugh at that fan base. The games at Bulldog Stadium are fun to go to. I've been to a few. That's a fun environment to go to. I mean, it may only be 37,000 people, but it's a very energetic 37,000 people.
Yeah, and I understand. And I don't want to get the San Diego State people angry either because we played them the first game. So it's like that's the kind of and San Diego State is a good program right now. So we have to understand that where are we going to go to get the best bang for our bucks? It's an economic thing. That's what we have to think about. Are we going to be able to get a deal that is going to give us enough money to support these other programs in our conference? And the heck with these conferences saying about that, we're really concerned about the academic. SC, what are you going to do when you have to go to Rutgers and play 2 games and then come back, for the week in basketball? Okay, you got to go to East Coast. You got to go to, all these different places in the Big Ten. And, where are you going to study? Are you going to study, or everybody going to get a private plane with a nice little study hall in there? What are they going to do? What are they going to do about that? Because it's not about academics. It's about money.
Yeah, and that's the part that, I gave up the college football. I probably haven't watched the national championship game in about 4 years now. I gave up the college football playoff because I was just sour on that process there. And this sours me more on big-time college football. As I mentioned before, I don't know that I'll watch anything other than what we watch to cover Arizona for what we do here on this platform. I threw out something earlier this week, and what I threw out was based more on what I believe is going to happen even further down the line, and that's the complete destruction of the conference setup as it stands right now, not even talking about what might be with a potential Big Ten and SEC. Eventually, it's all going to dissolve. From some conversations I had with people close to USC, they believe that that there may be another announcement of something bigger before USC even gets to the Big Ten in 2 years, and then that will be the next precedent set of what the direction of big-time college sports is going to be. I think from an Arizona standpoint, there's 2 things. One, I think you need to begin, and I get football as the drives the bus. I understand that, but I still think that there's going to be other basketball schools that are left out of this process. I think Kansas is one of those, is on that list. I could conceivably see schools like Indiana, maybe in Illinois, getting booted out of the lower echelons. Again, some of those lower feeding teams in conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC could get pushed out for other schools like Clemson and some of those other big-time football players. I think you've got to begin to think from that basketball mindset and maybe align yourselves with some more basketball-centric schools. And I threw out a dream blue blood conference that included schools like Duke, North Carolina, Louisville, which is another team, Kentucky, Arizona, Kansas. But these are schools that also play Power 5 football. So it's not like you're giving up the football element. You're just building it around the basketball side of it and bringing in schools that, and imagine just the schools I named off. Imagine a conference like that. That's competitive. It's competitive. There isn't. I mean, you'll eventually have teams that'll rise to the top and some that'll shift to the bottom. But all those programs, as they stand right now, are pretty evenly matched. So I think that would be the kind of conference that would be very, very attractive from a football and basketball side going forward. The more realistic, though, plan obviously is going to be some type of marriage between the Pac-12 and the Big 12, and or the Big 12 growing with Pac-12 teams. And for Arizona, I think you've got to look at what's around you. You've got Utah to the top. I think you've got to try to figure out something where you can create relationships with Utah and BYU. You've got Nevada to the north. I think you've got to look at something that creates relationships between Nevada and UNLV. And I know UNLV is maybe not as attractive as they were when we were in school back in the 1990s. Yeah. But that Las Vegas market, man, is something that whatever conference, somebody needs to adopt that Las Vegas market, because that essentially in the future to me is where everything west of the Mississippi is going to be based.
Yeah, they're going to, Vegas is going to get a baseball team, I think, and they're going to get a basketball.
You're Oakland A's.
Yeah, they're Oakland A's are going to be the Vegas A's, man. I'm telling you. But, I think also they might be going to a big three conferences and then leave the NCAA. Why not do that? Because the NCAA really, to me, is not really doing anything for them. But all they're doing is hampering them by giving them, what the NIL, that all this stuff that's growing, all these things that are growing, they may not even need to have the NCAA as a governing body and have those three conferences of all these big schools, and they go at it for their national championship.
All right, Glenn, thank you. We're just getting started. Wildcat Breakdown 2022. Stay with us for continuing coverage of Arizona Wildcats football.
Bear down.